Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. I'm John Newquist, and we're going to cover Safety Management Part 1. This is going to be from the Yates book also. It's going to be Chapter 19. When you go through the Yates book, which is at the third edition now, it has all the different topics of safety. And, and when you look at the book, it'll have topics from risk management to construction safety management theory. So if I just pull out the management theory section here, you can see he's going to go over several topics such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs and so on. 700-page book. He covers a lot of the material that's on the CSP, ASP. You can buy Click Safety books for ASP and CSP for $275. They're not bad. They're not in a readable format. They're more of a question and multiple choice question. Well, let's get a look at our presentation here, and we'll go into it here. And you'll see the presentation, and I will not be on the screen. Okay. And let me see. I got to move the presentation a little bit here. Okay. So we'll talk about the leaders of safety, 3 to 5 questions on the CSP for sure on this area. And we'll talk about, Mr. Heinrich and Mr. Deming, because those are the most famous people. One of the things they'll talk about in safety management is the culture of it. It's led by the top. You can have good culture where everybody's a team, they work together, they all understand how to do things. Every job has got the safety for the job. They have the right equipment. They all know how to do the work. That's what you want. And then there's other ones where they're having numerous injuries and accidents, and people don't know how to do the job. There are not controls to prevent these things. And you can get the climate or the culture could be a problem. The manager set the culture. Accountability is up to you in safety to make sure a lot of things happen. You're going to hear the term key performance index. That means you are going to have goals that you have to meet for safety. Some managers may not give you a goal. They just tell you that just try to make the thing OSHA compliant and so we don't get in trouble. That's not too good of a goal. Management has to be committed to safety. They should be taking a safety training. I am a firm believer all the managers get training once a month. If the top person isn't there, the other managers won't show up. They'll always have another reason because something else is more important because the top person isn't there. So, when I was at the Ford stamping plant in Cleveland, the plant manager's there. Every meeting, he's there. You don't have to worry about the finance person and the production manager not showing up because he's there. Again, management has to support your efforts. They have to let you get safety inspections in there. You don't want to be a 2,000 person company and not ever see the workers do the job. That's crazy. You're filling out so many paperworks and forms. You need to be out there. You need to see what's happening. You need to know what people are doing. Is it the right equipment they're using? Do they know how to do the job? And make sure that the environment is conducive for not having issues. The housekeeping is good. We won't talk about accident investigation. That's a different topic for later, as well as incentive programs. But, recognition is important. Everybody handles recognition a little bit different. Savannah may not want to have a crowd watch him say, hey, this person did a great job today. He's our safety champion. He may not want that kind of recognition. He may want a recognition that is more personal. Hey, Savannah, I looked at it. You got the job right. You got the PPE on. The housekeeping is good. Everything looks safe in the job you're doing. The tools got the guards. That's just goes a long way too. And then there's a handouts and toolbox talks you can do. I'm a big believer of covering all the equipment that you have at the facility in a training topic. And the new thing with toolbox talks is they give a quiz with it. Because people sign it and they say, well, I didn't learn anything. I just signed it. And so when you have to answer a question and quiz, I give quizzes after all my training. I did lockout yesterday. We're going to give a simple quiz afterwards. The different heroes of safety or the leaders of safety, Frederick Winslow Taylor did scientific management. He was the first person I saw do the time and motion studies, which I use in ergonomics all the time. We talk about risk factors, like if you're going to do the work above your shoulders for more than 2 hours, then that's going to be an ergonomic risk. And we want to sit there and try to limit the weights and try not to have people maybe do some rotation. But his principles are get rid of work that's inefficient. Try to avoid repetitive routine work that's going to hurt people. Match the job to the person. If they're going to do lifting, you set a lifting limit. You know, the place I was at yesterday, 35 pounds is what they're lifting. Otherwise, it's going to be a two-person lift of 70 pounds. After that, they're going to get equipment to lift it. They don't want to push 50 pounds like NIOSH or 70 pounds like the Forest Service. And then watch the workers. Talk about, you know, making sure they're doing it the way you want it to be done. Do they have the right equipment? Are they doing it right? And then make sure the managers are also able to do the work. There's nothing worse than if the manager can't explain to the worker how to run a machine or how to do anything. Hawthorne effect is a common question on the test. It goes back to Elton Mayo at Western Electric in Cicero, Illinois. Thousands of people at this facility. And, you know, they were all trying to increase production. And he figured if I increase the lighting, well, the production goes up, and it did. And next year they do the same thing, and it went up. Eventually he said, let's try it the other way. Let's reduce lighting. And one of the things that they found out, it still went up. And what they founded, once they got the experiment over, production decreased dramatically. And this showed job satisfaction. When people can work on things that they make the environment better, people do better. But getting involved in an experiment or working together on safety issues and everything else, when you're getting involved with a group, it does increase it. So when you start doing things like job hazard analysis, getting people involved, you'll get improvements in safety. When you start doing audits, you'll get improvement in safety. I always call that the Hawthorne effect, because now you're more involved with the workers, and it's going to be a positive outcome. So when I go to some horrible companies with, you know, 15% injury rates, you know, I tell them I can cut it in half in a year, because I'm going to do monthly audits. So we're going to talk about job hazard analysis. We're going to get all the people trained in it. And all of a sudden you go from maybe no training whatsoever in orientation to a lot. Another one was Maslow's what they call theory of human motivation. And I always start at the bottom. You know, people need food, shelter, and clothing. You know, without that, you know, you're really going to have a hard time getting the worker to concentrate at anything, because they have the basic needs are not met. Once you get that done, and the security at the house and the work is everything is good for safety, then you're going to be pretty good. Everybody likes working together usually. You know, there are exceptions. There are some people that don't want to deal with people. They're very loner. That's a different issue. But most people like working together in a team. And if the teamwork is good, they'll work well, and the team will be safer because they're all watching out for each other. Not everybody has the ideal to be a boss. Not everybody wants to be the CEO of the corporation. I know lots of companies where the worker is good. They say, well, make them a manager. I ask them, maybe they don't want to be a manager. If you got people who want to be a manager, you got to give them training and ask them, because there's people that don't want to be a manager. They don't want to deal with the discipline. They don't want to deal with supervision. And so everybody has a different level. It's not just that everybody's going to be funneling to the top and we're going to pick our best out of all our workers. You know, pick the managers, train them, and do it that way. And McKellen came up with acquired needs theory. You know, everybody's needs are different based on their experience. You know, the need for achieve is, most people want to be able to do a good job. They want to say, I did a good area. They want to be able to work with a team or have affiliation, that they're on a successful company. And again, the need for power, not necessarily. Some want to be better. You know, you can ask the person, you know, what is your qualities you think you have? And if they're saying they're ambitious and they want to be a boss, well, that could be good, but it also could be bad, you know. I mean, you don't want them tell the boss how to do their job, which is, you know, going to be an issue too. Hirschberg's two factors. You know, everybody says, what motivates employees? Pay. No, pay is one of the factors that make work good. People like recognition. They like to be told personally they're doing good. So when I get with the managers and we talk about some of these soft skills, we ask them, when's the last time you recognized a worker and said, good job? I mean, I've had managers that said, that's not my job. I said, what do you mean? I'm not there to give them praise. They're here to get a paycheck. My job is to fix the things that ain't working right. It's not good. They didn't bring me in to come here and be the hammer. They bring me in to coach and make sure the place is safer. And you got some managers that are, you know, we're going to call Theory X later on, that are very animated. And then you start looking at retention rate for that manager, and they're leaving more than any other manager. And eventually the boss figures this out, that this is a manager that's a lot of problems. You know, he's can do the work, but he's hard on everybody. He never rewards anybody. Everybody feels like they do everything wrong, and that's not good. But you give people with responsibility achievement, I love it, because I watch workers that I work with do exceptional work when they've been average for most of the time. But the hygiene factors, what's the is there security at the job? Is the conditions safe? Everything else are all things that make, give you job satisfaction if it's not there. And then knowledge checks, these are typical questions they ask. What's the Hawthorne effect? Well, people are going to work harder if they're part of an experiment. They're going to work harder if you start implementing safety things. Mr. McGregor and Theory X and Theory Y, and eventually it's Theory Z, but, they don't usually get into Theory Z very often. Hold on a minute. So, Theory X, we've all seen it. You see it in sports all the time. This is the manager. This is the coach who constantly talks while the players are playing. Get over here, do that. That means, you want to be out there. People don't need to work. You got to yell at them to work. That's a horrible manager. Usually doesn't do well. But people see it in sports. They do well. They think, well, this is good. Pure Theory Y manager, people like work. People do well if you get them coached. They'll take initiative. They'll do things that you don't expect. That's the manager that does well. And, most of your top companies are Theory Y managers. When you get into Likert, when you go out after a class, they give you an evaluation. This is what Likert created, Do you agree? Was the class good? Strongly agree. It could be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 7. He also talked about when you do investigations, open-ended questions. Do you feel safe at the job? Yes or no? No, you ask them, what is it like to work here? What's the safety like? And they have the worker explain. Blanchard sold millions of books with the 1-minute manager, and the idea is that, you kind of talk about what do you got to do. So a lot of people take this as a job hazard analysis meeting in the morning. We got to dig a trench today. We're going to make sure the trench is safe by cutting it back at a 45-degree angle because it's type B soil. We're going to use a ladder to go in there. We're going to make sure the dirt is 2 feet away. Simple goals that you can cover with the workers. When you go out there, you see people doing the right. You say, listen, this is pretty good. You guys all got the hard hats. You're all wearing the safety glasses, construction boots. We're getting the pipes done right on time. A 1-minute praise. And then if you see things wrong, you go over there and say, hey, John, I noticed you got prescription glasses. Are those safety glasses? No, I don't have prescription glasses. Well, how come? Well, I went to Walmart. They were closed, and I never had time to get back there. And so you're going to say, okay, John, at the end of the hour, at the end of the day, we're going to go to Walmart and get you some safety glasses. Meanwhile, you're going to wear these Patriot over to eyeglasses and stuff. That doesn't sound like a reprimand, but really what you're doing is you're trying to correct the behavior. Stephen Covey wrote 7 Habits of the Highly Effective People, which eventually became 8 Habits with his last book. But, the managers have to be proactive. They got to take responsibility. You see it all the time. We had an issue with the plant. We lost a team member, or we had a team member injured. We've got programs and procedures. We're going to cooperate with all the federal agencies. That's being responsible. And think about what you want to do. You got to have a goal in safety. Everybody wants to say, well, we're going to have 0. But I always look at it, that's fine if you got hazard analysis in place, training in place, hazards are gone in the facility, then we can start pushing to 0. But otherwise, we need to get all these things done. And talk about what's doing first. When we go out there and we take a construction site, we know falls and struck by and power lines are big sources of death. So we got to make sure those are always going to be dealt with. If you go in industrial, getting hit by equipment, getting lockout issues or machine guarding issues, as well as falls are going to be an area that you have to talk about. One of the things I'm seeing is people falling down the stairwell. And the 7 cases that I've looked at, people aren't using the handrail. Why? Because they don't have a 3-inch gap to put their hand. They're on the cell phone or they're carrying boxes. So we come up there, and people said, well, we don't need a meeting to talk about it. I said, it doesn't mean not a 5-minute meeting. Go up there like, Blanchard, talk about, this is our topic today. We're going to talk about when we got to come down the stairs. We're not going to use the cell phone. If we can't carry a box and hold the handrail, then go get a cart. You're going to use the elevator. And then, like I said, there's got to be a 3-inch clearance. And I go out there. I go to companies all the time, top 50, and they don't have the clearance. I mean, I watch the videos. You take your hand out, next thing you know, you fall down the stairs, and it's killed 7 people in 2022. So it's something you got to deal with. And to talk about, you listen. You ask, if you're not sure what the employee said, repeat it back. Work with employees. Try to get to know the employees as well as make sure that you take time. I watched one of the richest people talk about how he has to work 120 hours a week and he's exhausted. That's not good. That's not good. You're not going to be effective. You're not going to focus. It's too much time. So delegate. That's what I would tell people. And Tom Peters went to 43 Fortune 500 companies, and he looked at what made them successful. They make decisions. They don't procrastinate. If you got the cable subscription services dropping, then you better find out why, and you got to figure out what we got to do to fix it. You got to analyze what's going wrong. If you're having an accident in the maintenance department, figure out what's these accidents. Is it the turnover? Is it the time of people in the agency or the work? Something is there, and you can usually put a trend together. And it doesn't always have to come back to it's going to be the same thing every time. You could have 9 different issues, but you start looking at what did they have? They didn't have the training. And then work with the customers. I always see this all the time. People don't ask what the customers want. When you go in there, you get people drinking a beverage. One of the things that the one guy who I respect, he says, you never put a person's face on a beverage, because people associate the beverage with them. They don't want to see a person's name. They don't care who it is. They look at them. This is why I drink the beverage, because it's me. That's part of my lifestyle. They don't want to see a person's name. And he said that's a big mistake. Autonomy, entrepreneur. Make sure people bring up ideas. Reward people for bringing up suggestions. I go in a company, and let's say it's got 500 people. I ask them, how many safety suggestions have you gotten in the last year? The average is 1 or 2. I says, you should have 500. And they're like, John, they don't fill out the suggestion box. I said, well, the suggestion box is because you don't want suggestions. You should be out there. You should be out on the ground talking to people. You go out there. I tell people, audit everybody every month. You got 500 people. You're going out there talking to them. Ask them, hey, how's the work going? What could we do to make it safer? Anything you see that's an issue with safety, production, quality? We get into all these issues because they'll see things that the machine isn't working. Maybe not a safe issue, but if the machine is stopping, they're just wasting time, and they've never brought it up. So, you should be able, at the end of the year, have a lot of suggestions. And we talk about, their source of quality. They can pick up things that are not working right. The trays are not making right. The areas not being cut right for the glass in the construction building. These are things that quality mistakes can cost a lot of money. And then we talk about, stay with what you know. Don't be buying things that, companies that sounds like it's something we want to get into, and you have no idea what something goes through, So lean staff, there's a span of control. That's a question they'll ask you. How many people can you effectively supervise? 5 to 7. 5 is kind of ideal span. But, I've been in a situation where I've had to supervise 33 people. That's too many. That's too many, because you really don't get to know them. You don't get to go through it. So, you want to try to say, we could use a couple supervisors. And it doesn't mean you're not going to deal with them. You're going to just have the day-to-day operations are going to be dealt with somebody else. And the knowledge check. Likert scales used to measure attitude measurement. What did you think of the class? Deming, it seems like always a question on the CSP. He went to Toyota back in the early days in the 70s and started working with them on quality. If you had asked people what Japan was in the 1960s, it was junk products. Made in Japan meant junk. And he started working with quality. He got rid of, piecework and individual goals, started working as a team, started looking at the mistakes of quality. Okay, what does the tolerance on the cylinder have to be before the cylinder doesn't wobble and break? Well, it might be a thousandth of an inch. He started looking at, can we make it a thousandth of an inch? And he started looking at it, making sure that everything worked perfectly. That if it wasn't quality, we weren't going to put it on the car. If the part breaks after, 50,000 hours of use, then we don't want that part. We want a part that can last 10 years. So all of a sudden, the Toyota Corolla and Celica are going 200,000 miles when everybody else was getting 100,000 miles on the car. And next thing you know, they became the largest company. When I went to Ford, GM, and Chrysler, and Mitsubishi, they all wanted to be Toyota. That was the number one company. They wanted to say, how does Toyota have not all these recalls? They did a great job. I'm dealing with a company that had 200,000 cars recalled last year. 200,000. That's a lot of cars for quality mistakes. So he also did the plan, do, check, act cycle. We'll cover in a second. But the 14 points, you got to know. You got to know. These are just some of the points, and if you get the book, you can read about Deming. You know, we talk about work as a team, drive out fear. You know, make sure everybody works in there. You know, everybody knows what they have to do. You know, you can automate things, try to get it in there. You know, because the machine's doing routine, repetitive, integral operations. That's pretty good for a robot. And again, educate, constantly improve. Management by objective was Mr. Drucker. You know, he started what they call the key performance indicators. Safety has to have goals that are specific, measurable. Well, everybody did lagging indicators like incident rate, lost time rate, total days away from work. You know, you were a great company if you're below the average, you're a bad company if you're above it. That's nonsense. If you don't fix the hazards, you're going to have accidents. If you don't have people trained, you're going to have accidents. You know, I mean, it just goes hand in hand. So leading indicators like how many people have had ladder safety training, fall protection training, competent person training, those are important because then they'll see the drops in accidents and stuff. But this is, you know, something that goes in here. Plan, do, check, and act is, you know, the Deming cycle. It's, you know, we got to sit there and plan for the trench. We're going to make sure it's going to be dug 7 feet. It's going to be at a 45-degree angle for B. Or if we're at 5 foot deep in the middle of the city, we're going to use a trench box. We're going to have a ladder for access. The ladder is going to stick up 3 feet above the landing. We're going to make sure the dirt's not within 2 feet of the edge of the box. And we're going to have cave-in protection by putting steel plates at the end of it so we can get the work in. Then we go out and execute it, and then this competent person is going to check this all the time. And then if there's an action like, oh, listen, there's a utility coming across the line, we're going to have to sit there and probably go to shoring now. You know, things like that. Heinrich came up with the ratio of 30, 29, and 1. You know, he looked at lots of injuries, thousands, and he came up with, wow, for every major injury, we had about 300 near misses. A lot of people don't even do near misses. I'm still, you know, it's 2023. We're still not doing near misses. But I do them all the time, and there's going to be a lot of them. You know, people trip and fall. You take them to the clinic, they're good. Why did you trip and fall? Well, you know, there wasn't good access to the platform, and so I just jumped 36 inches. Well, we don't want you jumping 36 inches. You know, we want to get a portable stair that's easy to deal with. Trouble is, he came up with 88% of people are the employee's fault for all the acts unsafely they did. That's not true. When I was with OSHA, 5%. If you got a program training, audits, and you enforce the program, it's only about 5% of the employees are mistake. It's not that many. What's Deming known for? Total quality management. And again, they'll ask you, they may give you a question with 3 Deming principles and one that's like a Hirschberg principle or somebody else. You got to be able to pick it out. And then, you know, the 6 criteria for safety excellence. Management is visibly committed. This comes from Peterson. They're not going to ask you about Peterson usually. But, you know, the idea, the managers are walking the talk. They talk about it. They go out there. They have the safety ones. We got to change the building in this building over here with John here. John's the safety director in Chicago. And, you know, they were using ladders going up 25 feet. I said, that's nonsense. Why don't we get a portable lift? Take it up. They've got guardrails around it. You can tie off into the lift even. And now you're not going to fall ever. You know, because we know ladders are the number one source of fall. Let's get rid of the ladders. You know, I work with Turner Saturday. We got ladders last. We are not going to use a ladder unless we can't physically get there or do something. And if then, we're going to use a platform ladder and things like that. And, you know, we had 200 people we're talking to because we want to, you know, even though they're number one country, we want to be the number one in safety, number one in everything. It's not just we're the largest because we got the most revenue. But the managers are accountable. We hold the managers responsible, whether in industrial construction, for the safety of their work crews. If you have an accident, we're going to ask the manager some tough questions. When we come out there and there's several things wrong, that manager's got a lot of explaining. Doug, what's going on? How come the traffic control is wrong? How come the people don't have the PPE on? Well, you know, nobody's out here. You know, it's a remote. No, what's our policy, Doug? And we're supposed to wear hard hats, safety glasses, construction boots, reflective vests, you know, and so on. Well, then let's make sure it's going there. Where's the job brief for the morning, Doug? I didn't have time to do it. So, you know, we do the audit and stuff, and the president's going to call Doug and say, Doug, what's going on? This is my program. This is not Mr. Newquist and the safety guy for their company's program. It's my program. What was going on, Doug? These are things that I want done because it makes a difference. Oh, well, you know, I'll work on it. Doug didn't work on it, and he was gone. Other companies, managers, they fixed it. You know, I mean, you know, the idea is we're trying to do it right. Any questions? Okay. This is just a taste of safety. When I teach safety management, it's usually about 6 hours, so you're getting, half hour of it. Thank you very much. Thank you for all that came, and I'll talk to you later.